All right, ladies and gentlemen, council, we're at general committee. It is Tuesday, November 17th, and the time, Mr. Clerk, is 7:02. I'll ask for a declaration of pecuniary interest and nature thereof. And seeing none, I would like to address an item. I think it's our tree bylaw. It's item 1. And it has been brought up before by Councillor Gardner and one of our speakers today that I may be in pecuniary interest. I work at Westview Golf Course, and I have seen legal counsel, and I am not benefiting in any way financially, whether this decision comes forward for or against, so I am not in conflict. Could I have an approval of the agenda as amended? Motion by Councillor Tom, seconded by Councillor Kim. Comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Could we go into a determination of items requiring separate discussion? I'll start on my right today. Councillor Marakis, I hope I didn't catch you off guard.
Nothing right now, Mr. Chair, but I'll wait till.
I'll come back. That's very good.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Item 4, I believe.
I'm sorry, Councillor.
Item 4.
Item 4. Councillor Humphreys, I'll allow you a moment to sit down. We're doing items that require separate discussion. Councillor Tom.
I suppose because we have a delegation, I'll pull number 6.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kim.
I'm good, thank you.
Councillor Marakis.
I don't want this now. To provide direction.
I guess number 1 and
Thank
number
you.
2.
Number 1 and number 2. Councillor Humphreys, do you want to recap?
Yeah, if you don't mind, please.
We have pulled so far items 1, 2, 4, and 6. Oh, good. All right.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I had to go out of the council chamber. Could I add my items?
Go ahead, Councillor Gardner. You just made it.
I know. Thank you. I don't believe 7 has been pulled.
No.
10, 14, 15, and were 2 and 3 pulled?
Not 3.
Thank you.
I'll do a recap, Mr. Clerk. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Items pulled: 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 10, 14, and 15. Council? It's good. Could I have a motion for an adoption of all the items not requiring separate discussion? Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Gardner. Comments, questions? I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. We have delegations tonight. I see 4. Our first one is Isabel Ralston. If you are all set, if you could, we ask 5 minutes, your name and your address, please.
My name is Isabel Ralston. We live at 12 Woodsend Crescent in Aurora, and I would like to thank Council for this opportunity to express our support for the draft tree protection bylaw. As an example highlighting why the current Aurora tree bylaw should be changed, we refer to tree culling conducted by our neighbour, one of Aurora's leading golf clubs. Over the 22 years at our current residence, we have witnessed massive tree destruction by this golf club. Our estimate is that hundreds and perhaps thousands of large mature native trees as well as smaller trees have been destroyed throughout the golf course. Large areas of woodlots have been completely razed with the removal of all trees, saplings and large trees alike. We choose to live in this area because of the mature forest. At times, a significant tree removal has taken place within very close proximity to our property, resulting in an incremental and substantial loss of neighboring forest. Consequently, the view and privacy from our home has been drastically changed to the point where there are now essentially open spaces adjacent to our property where there were previously dense woods. The current Aurora tree bylaw excludes golf courses from requiring a permit for removal of trees. Consequently, golf courses in Aurora are presently allowed to remove as many trees within the woodlot designation as they wish, tens, hundreds, or thousands of trees, without the need to go through any permit process and without the need to inform neighbors, town officials, or any other party. As homeowners, we are justifiably required by the town of Aurora to gain permits to remove live trees and have to place visible notices on the street in order to inform interested parties. We question why the golf courses in Aurora are currently exempt from the regulations whereby all residents and most businesses in Aurora are governed. Because Aurora golf courses are exempt from the tree bylaw, systematic destruction of trees can occur in order to make golf courses more viable for developers. Removing this exemption would allow the town and residents the opportunity to be notified and be involved in decisions regarding tree removal on woodlots in golf courses. This would thereby reduce any potential non-transparent preparation and grooming of a golf course for future development. We are therefore in agreement with the recommended change outlined in the draft tree protection bylaw to remove the exemption for golf courses in Aurora's current tree bylaw. Let me take a moment to remind you why trees are important. It goes without saying that trees have an immense ecological, economic, health, and social value. And you can see the U.S. Department of Agriculture has assigned a value to this particular tree. The following are the reasons why we should protect our urban forests, not the least of which are oxygen generation and carbon dioxide sequestration, especially in the light of climate change. Throughout the past 4 years, while preparing revisions to the tree protection bylaw, town staff has conducted a thorough and comprehensive review, including 1, a survey to residents with a favorable response. There were 130 responses, which is quite good for this type of survey, and the large majority of residents opted for stricter tree protection. 2, they conducted meetings and consultations with residents. 3, they conducted extensive meetings and consultation with golf courses and other businesses in Aurora. And 4, there was an assessment by the Environmental Committee. We commend the Town of Aurora staff for its insightful, inclusive, and thoughtful review. In addition to town staff efforts, an excellent open house took place, sponsored by a previous councillor, that included presentations from a professor in the Forestry Department, University of Toronto.
1 minute.
An Ontario-based environmental group and a local wildlife representative, all extolling the benefits of urban forest protection. Aurora is situated directly on the ecologically sensitive Oak Ridges Moraine. The Ontario government is currently reviewing the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Act. Now of all times would be an appropriate time for Aurora to step forward, provide leadership, and truly demonstrate its commitment to preserving the ecology of the moraine. One way of doing so would be acceptance of the draft tree protection bylaw. In conclusion, 1, we feel that the draft tree protection bylaw is crucial in protecting our trees towards a greener, environmentally friendly Aurora. 2, we recommend at very least the clause related to the golf course exemption should be addressed as soon as possible. This issue by far is the one that relates to the largest number of trees in potential jeopardy in Aurora. And I would just like to finish, and I'll just leave you with a few thoughts here, different thoughts on what trees are. But anyway, it is both a privilege and a responsibility to live in Aurora and on the Oak Ridges Moraine. We have great respect for the forest and its contribution to the delicate Oak Ridges Moraine ecosystem. We appreciate the forest's heritage and wish to leave it unscathed and healthy for the well-being of wildlife and the environment and for the future enjoyment of others.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to receive and refer? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Tom. Questions? Comments? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you for coming once again, for being persistent since 2011. You mentioned woodlots, and is there were you trying to make a distinction there? I'm not sure what your purpose was.
Yes, I think there's quite often a lot of confusion, and I know that we've been through this before, but especially for the benefit of the new councillors, perhaps. York Region is responsible for woodlands, which are defined as areas of contiguous forest that are greater than 1 hectare. Anything that is less than 1 hectare is called a woodlot, and a hectare is still a very, substantially large. It's the size of, let's say, about a football field. So any woodlots that are by themselves in a golf course that are 1 hectare or less would fall under, that falls outside of York Region and would fall under the Aurora bylaw.
Thank you.
Councillor? Anyone else? Nope. Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Our second delegate today is Mr. Jim Tree, our Manager of Parks, and on item 3. Councillor Thompson, just before you begin, Mr. Tree, as you get settled. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Abel. I just wanted to recognize Regional Councillor Joe Lee, who's in the audience this evening. He's come to watch a little bit of Aurora Council.
Welcome.
Thank you for attending.
Mr. Tree, 5 minutes.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of council, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. We have on our agenda tonight 3 items. My delegation is based on the first item. And with your indulgence, Mr. Chair, it may take me a few more minutes than 10 minutes to get through my presentation to deal with all 3 of these topics.
I'll just ask for a waiver of procedure. Councillor Tom, seconded by Councillor Marakis. All those in favor of extending time? Opposed? That carries. Carry on.
I'll try to be brief. This evening we're talking about our urban forest management plan and the policies, and I touched on that I think 2 weeks ago when I was here to talk about the tree compensation policy. The tree compensation policy is one of the policies within the urban forest management plan. The plan is based on past practices, formal procedures that we've been practicing for a number of years. It's all coming about as part of the urban tree study that we did in 2012. Some of the things that are in the plan is the urban forest study. Council will see on their agenda this evening, and there's a link to our website where all of these documents are placed. There's probably hundreds of pages, so hard copies were difficult to produce for you this evening. We have the woodlands management plan, we have our tree inventory, we have all of the new policies, procedures, and all the forestry operations that we conduct. We have the tree preservation, protection, and compensation policies. The purpose of the forestry plan is to provide a comprehensive approach in the management of the town's urban forest resources. The plan is, we believe, needed to state a formal policy which sets the standard for all aspects of our urban forestry operations, to guide in the enhancement and preservation of our forest resources. Some of the benefits, there's a few, there's many more in the documents which you'll see. It's a made-in-Aurora set of policies and plans that are based on our actual urban forests. It's our composition of urban forests, its condition and its needs. It's consistency in the administration of all forestry and associated landscaping works in the town on both private and public lands. It's all to guide us in how we consistently deal with these applications for development, site plans, and so forth. The specifications and policies on the protection and preservation of trees, and it establishes a minimum service level consistent in the delivery of our arboricultural services. Again, that's a lot of what we've been doing in practice over many, many years, now put into writing and cleaned up to get good policy and good direction for staff to follow. Okay. The next piece was the tree removal compensation policy. We spoke about that at the last meeting, and I don't want to belabor it too much other than to say, again, that it's all to do with replacement of trees that are cut, either through a permit process, through a site plan application, minor variance application. It's a means of replacing trees that are removed for those types of land development. It's described in our official plan in section 12.6, speaks directly to compensation and policies in place for those types of things. Designed to sustain and maintain and increase our urban canopy and the future of Aurora, Aurora's environment. The compensation policy will apply to landowners who propose to remove trees to facilitate land development through site plan and subdivision agreement process. As I said, the policy will apply to minor variance applications, people that are looking to expand their lots or their building footprint in areas where there are trees, sensitive areas, and that there'll be some guidelines on how to go forward with that. Compensation could apply to permit to remove trees. Although it's not tied directly to the bylaw, it's one of the things that's mentioned in the bylaw, and we can make use of the policy within the bylaw. Our focus is on actually trying to get trees replanted as opposed to taking monetary compensation. It's all about trees removed, trees planted, future canopy. We will take monetary payments if there are no opportunities, no land available to plant the trees on the site, and we could collect the funds, hold them in reserve, and those funds would be exclusively used for replanting projects throughout the town. I think you got to run this. Okay, we're moving now into the tree bylaw. I put together a bit of a chronology of what has happened with the tree bylaw, where we started, how we've moved through the process, and actually where we are today. So in January of 2011, Council directed us, staff, to form a committee to review the bylaw, the existing and current tree bylaw. The purpose of that was to look at areas where we could increase the or improve some of the language and make it a little more restrictive about removing trees. We did that. There was a committee that was formed, and we met on a number of occasions. We reviewed the bylaw. We looked at issues within the bylaw, and we recommended changes. In May 2011, we did an online survey, public survey, and it was quite well participated in. A previous speaker noted there was 130 odd responses. There was clear direction that people were interested in more preservation, more restrictions, and that the forest was of significant importance to the residents. Again, in May in 2011, we did a written notification. We invited comments. We circulated to all the stakeholders, golf courses, school boards, conservation authorities, inviting them to comment into the process and be part of the process. We did our notices on the website, notice board, again, inviting comments. In January 17, 2012, we did a presentation of the draft bylaw, and Council recommended that we do a further public notification period. And February 19, 2013, Council adopted EAC's minutes, as Council had actually referred the bylaw to EAC and staff, Environmental Action Committee. EAC recommended to Council that the bylaw be approved as amended, subject to Council's final review and approval. On October 1st, we presented the bylaw again. October 8th, that was at the General Committee, I should say, and October 8th, that Council referred the bylaw to staff for further revision. January 14th, 2014, staff presented the report, PR 1404, with a series of various options for Council to consider in the final tree protection bylaw. And January 21st, Council referred the draft bylaw back to staff. Staff, I wouldn't say we're at a loss, but we were at some crossroads in determining what it was that we needed to do with this bylaw and trying to get something that council could support. The topic of discussion at the time, as I recall, there were 3 issues that seemed to be of some difficulty for council. Those were removing trees in the Heritage District. There was an issue with respect to removing trees on larger residential properties, greater than 0.25 hectares, and removing trees on golf course properties. We felt as staff that the balance of the changes and revisions in the bylaw were reasonable. And council could live with those changes. There didn't seem to be much discussion other than these 3 items. So in terms of the changes in the bylaw, just as a refresher for previous councillors and new councillors, there were some significant changes in the bylaw. The biggest one was the reduction in the number of trees that could be removed without obtaining a permit was down to 2 from 4 trees that are over 20 centimeters in diameter. Anything below 20 centimeters in diameter is exempt from the bylaw currently and as proposed. Golf courses would no longer be exempt from the bylaw. As the previous speaker indicated, golf courses will still have to comply with the regional tree bylaw where the golf course properties are woodland designations as opposed to woodlot designations. In the case of a woodlot designation, they will be required to comply with our bylaw where the property or the woodlot stand is greater than 1 hectare. The bylaw will now apply to conservation authorities where woodlots are 1 hectare or less. School boards will be included, previously exempt. The Parks and Recreation Director will be able to issue permits in the new bylaw. Reason for that being is that it will streamline the process significantly. Right now it takes 6 to 8 weeks to get a permit approved. And from a customer services standpoint, that seems a little lengthy. Decisions will always be appealable to council. Permit would be required to remove a single tree larger than 70 centimeters in diameter in any area of town. And a permit would be required to be obtained with a single tree in the heritage designation areas over 20 centimeters in diameter. And we would be looking at now a new set fine of a minimum fine of $500 per offense to a maximum of $10,000. And we're back to where we were having some issues. And I believe that is it.
Thank you, Mr. Tree. Could I have a motion to receive? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Marakis, comments, questions? I'll start with Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tree, for presenting this evening, and great job. And I think you did the history and background of the draft tree bylaw, protection bylaw, perfectly. That's exactly what happened. And I'm not sure how it's all come along, but I am very happy to see it come back to this point so we can continue the discussion, and appreciate it being on the agenda this evening. I know there was a lot of confusion. I think what happened, for those of us that remember and were there, was that the options were all there and it was clear. Staff did a solid job in doing that, but I think we all got caught up in how to choose or select, what we felt would be additional protection, or there were others that felt that it was good enough. So I'm happy to have it back on the table. I know where I felt we could use additional tree protection, so looking forward to discussing it tonight, and thank you again for thank you again for your presentation. I think we're just receiving it tonight, but we'll see.
We're looking for direction. That was the amendment. And if there's questions on the presentations, are you complete? The comments? Thank you. I'll go to Mayor Dahl, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Mr. Tree. Thank you, Mr. Tree. Well done.
Thank you.
Question on the draft tree protection bylaw. Moving from 4 to 2. I haven't, if I've missed it, I apologize, but I haven't seen anything here that refers to the size of the property. Have I missed it?
No, you haven't. Nothing has changed in terms of the size of the property. There was discussion, Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. Chair, but nothing was, I don't believe, resolved in that regard. So there were a number of votes, defeats, and so forth, and I tried to track that. It took me 3 days, but it was a long process. But I don't think at the end of the day that it was decided.
So if I have a lot that's 50 by 100, which is an 1/8 acre, or a half acre, or 2 acres, or 200 acres.
Correct.
I can remove 2 trees.
Correct.
That's correct?
That's correct. We gave council options in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Tree.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Tree, for all the years as you went through the chronology of coming and bringing it forward and working on this. In your presentation, as well as in the report, you referenced the fact that while trees on golf courses are exempt under our current bylaw, there is a regional bylaw that does impact them, and by definition, it has to qualify as a woodland.
Correct.
Can you sort of, I guess, expand, based on the region's definition, what the woodland qualification is?
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chair, the region has designated woodlands within the region. They have mapped these areas out. They are known quantities, if you will, within the region. By our definition, these are areas that are considered forest lands that are 1 hectare or greater. So, while we have a wood lot, it is the same as a woodland in terms of its composition, however, it's smaller. So the region has classified woodlands as larger than 1 hectare and contiguous. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're all on the same property. A contiguous woodlot can cross property boundaries. And so while some properties are large enough to have a contiguous woodland on them, they are under the region's bylaw. So they would have to obtain a regional tree removal permit to remove trees on those lands. If the wood lot is separate from the woodland and it is not contiguous, there's a split and a division, and there's a 1 hectare or less area of trees, that would be considered a forest type environment. But because it is separate, it's not contiguous, it would then fall onto the municipal bylaw.
Thank you. As a follow-up, you mentioned that the region has a map that outlines all these woodland areas. To the best of your knowledge, do some of those woodland areas overlap the golf courses that are currently in Aurora?
Yes.
How good's your memory? Are you able to identify some or all?
The one that comes to mind, I guess the council will be most familiar with, is Beacon Hall. There could be others, by the way.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Tree. If either under woodland or woodlot, would any notice have to be given to the town as it stands now by the region or private landowners?
In case of, through you, Mr. Chair, in case of the region bylaw, I'm not aware of any notification that has to be, public notification that has to be provided. To my knowledge, it does not have to be provided. I stand to be corrected, but I don't believe it does. In the case of the current tree permit bylaw that we have, there is a requirement to post signage on the subject property for a 2-week period, noting the date and time of the council meeting that the permit would be heard.
But
there is no other notification period or requirement other than that.
So with respect to golf courses, because they're not covered under the present tree bylaw, there would be no requirement to put that notification on their property?
That's correct. However, notwithstanding that fact, I believe the region has provided some notification, but it's not required.
And also, follow-up through you, Mr. Chair, not required by private landowners?
It's not required by private landowners. to my knowledge.
Thank you. Are golf courses exempt from the management plan for the urban forest management plan?
The urban forest, through you, Mr. Chair, the urban forest management plan will apply to all property owners where there's a development application or a site plan application. So, or a minor variance application. The planning application will introduce the policy. A tree permit bylaw will introduce the policy. This is how we've structured the policy. So it's a trigger through a land development application typically.
Thank you. And I think part of the confusion is, and I'm looking at your report, when you came back to council one of those times, I think the last time, the committee's position.
If I could, Councillor Gardner, we're going to bring this item up
Okay, will
front.
Mr. Tree be able to speak to any questions?
I could see him. We won't let you go, Mr. Tree.
Sometimes I wish my name wasn't Tree.
Just to keep things moving, Councillor, I just thought if it was presentation, if we
That's
could.
fine. Thank you for your work on this.
Thank you very much. Any other councillors? If I may, I looked at an urban forest plan that was adopted in Vancouver 2014, and it talked about planting, protecting, and managing as the three key words into an urban forest plan. And that's what we're adopting here. And you've identified that the greatest, in your report, the greatest canopy cover is in the residential areas?
Yes, sir.
And those residential areas, and by large, can be thought of as farmers' fields as far back as maybe 60 years ago. And these are all trees that have been planted by residential areas and they've grown. Would that be fair comment?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
And any forest can be regenerated?
I beg your pardon?
Forests can be regenerated?
Yes.
I mean, that's
Yes.
the philosophy under urban. Okay. And do we currently have a tree bylaw?
Yes.
We do have a tree
Yes.
protection bylaw.
Yes, we do.
So then what we're seeing before us is just a more restrictive measures put in place. And so have we got issues residentially, apart from the one at Beacon Hall, are there other concerns and complaints that have been brought forward to your knowledge?
There are always concerns and complaints in our line of work. We hear from people all the time about different things in the environment, and tree cutting is absolutely one of those.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Humphreys?
Through Mr. Chair, just a quick question. From your recollection of the tree bylaw in the presentation, I'm not sure if it's this for now, but you know what? I'm sorry. This is for an item for later discussion on item 1. Apologies, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any further questions about the presentation? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Tree. You said a lot of things, but I think one of the things you said that there was a lot of consultation with the public, with the stakeholders, and I'm assuming that would be including the golf courses as well?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. We did have extensive consultations. As I said in the presentation, we did through notice board, we did through our website, we did the survey. We had direct consultation with stakeholders, all the golf courses. On several occasions, we conducted meetings with the golf courses. I apologize, I haven't elaborated in the latest information, but we did conduct meetings with the golf courses individually and as a group. We're pretty careful to make sure that we had provided them with all of the information that was coming forward to council. And as council had heard in the past, is that there was opposition to the bylaw. But as we'd indicated in one of the reports, I believe, is that at the last time the bylaw came forward and we'd made the contact with the golf clubs to allow, to notify them that the item was coming forward, there didn't seem to be much in the way of attendance at the meeting or any delegations, I don't believe, at that time. Regardless, we did have extensive consultations.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tree, for the presentation. I was just curious, is the regional bylaw more restrictive than the town's bylaw when it comes to tree protection? And speaking specifically to the golf courses.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the regional bylaw is structured a little bit differently in that their primary focus is with the agricultural side of things, and they look at urban tree removal a little bit differently in that if they issue a permit, they would look at it as a special permit or a different type of permit. I don't want to say it's more restrictive or less restrictive. They look at the application for what it is, they examine it, they may ask for conditions on it, they may not. But it's a different process in that it is more to do with larger properties, more agricultural based. If they issue a permit in the town of Aurora in an urban area, it's a special permit typically.
Thank you. So just as a follow-up through you, Mr. Chair, so then I guess it's safe to say that it's more of a management plan instead of a tree protection. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure it's fair to say. Through you, Mr. Chair, I think that they would look for rationale before they issue a permit.
Okay.
They would look for a business case rationale, something that they would be able to justify the need for a permit to be issued.
But they're through you, Mr. Chair, so they're not exempt at the regional level.
I beg your pardon?
They're not exempt at the regional level.
Nobody is exempt from the regional bylaw on forest areas greater than 1 hectare if it's considered a woodland.
Thank you.
Seeing no more questions, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Mr. Clerk. Thank you very much, Mr. Tree. You covered 3 items, so it was a bit lengthy, and I appreciate that. Our next delegate, you can help me. Dr. Brian Moore. Dr. Moore, if you could state your name and address, please. You have 5 minutes.
Absolutely. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Brian Moore, and my address is 15,000 Yonge Street in the Heritage District of Aurora. As many of you are aware, I have recently completed an extensive renovation to this heritage property under the guidance of town staff Marco Ramuno and May Al Habin. Our goal in design and construction has always been to enhance the appearance and uniqueness of the building while improving the downtown core viability. It is this uniqueness that brings about this request for a sign variance. I've received written support from my neighboring business and property owners in support of this application, which I'm able to provide to you. I would ask for your assistance and support tonight in approving this sign variation application, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you. And I have the supports here. I'm not sure how to give those to you.
If you could give them to our secretary and Sam there.
There we go.
Thank you. Could I have a motion or to receive? Councillor Gardner, you're putting a motion to receive. Seconded. Councillor Tom. Questions, comments? Councillor Gardner, did you want to make a question or comment?
Thank you, and thank you for coming. I have a lot of difficulty with exemptions to our sign bylaw, but I would like to say that you have done a beautiful job, and you've located on Yonge Street. You've taken the chance on the downtown core, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Dr. Moore, for coming out tonight. I just had a couple of questions. Looking at the report that we're going to be talking about later, the request includes, it says vinyl or fabric, so the idea is to have it mounted over and stretched over a firm backing.
Correct.
Have you decided on which to use, vinyl or fabric?
There has been no decision on that as yet.
Because I'm not in the sign business, but I deal with this stuff quite a lot. And anyways, I know vinyl can be, there's some glare associated with it, but fabric, it tends to be a bit more aesthetically pleasing in my opinion. So I just wanted to get an idea of whether or not you had made a decision on that. I think that's all I have in terms of questions. Oh, I might as well ask, how many business owners did, I know you were going to distribute that information, but how many business owners supported your
Immediately,
application?
just right around the office is 12.
12 business owners that supported the application. Correct. And those are immediate businesses?
Correct, next door and across the street.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sir, for coming out tonight. It's an obvious response, but I'll ask it anyway. What's the intention of asking for the sign variance? What's wrong with the type of signs that are already out on Yonge Street, and what do you hope to gain by having this variance?
Dr. Moore?
There's nothing wrong with the types of signs that are there. Our particular ground sign that we have is an indication of the name of the business, but in our specialty practice, it benefits the members of the town and the members of the public to know exactly what service we provide through an additional sign. So we don't get those specific services on the main sign. It really says our company name, but it doesn't specifically state the services.
Through you, Mr. Chair, is it fair to say that from the signatories that you received from the other businesses, that they are not only in support of it, but from your conversations, are they also considering a sign variance to mimic something that you have designed?
I don't think that these businesses are looking at sign variances. They have multiple signs already that have already been approved. So I don't see them coming forth and asking for more signage. I would have one sign, they have multiple signs.
Thank you.
Dr. Moore, if I may, I think the question is why you're here. I think it really is just where the placement of the sign is recommended. Correct. At 2.4 meters, and you're asking to bring it down.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's the variance. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, and thank you for coming this evening. Along those lines, I think one of the I guess issues is the fact that the overall size of the sign is significantly larger than what's proposed in the bylaw. In our report, it says it's 3 times the allowed size. Yes. And so I guess perhaps if you can speak again to why you feel it's necessary to have such a large footprint for a sign.
For a sign, and I understand that. We've looked at it and looked at a number of signs in the town. Yonge Street's it's a very busy road. There's a lot of traffic there, and it's mostly for visual. If I put up a small sign as allowed by the bylaw, it just quite frankly won't be seen. And so we've asked for a larger sign below the glazing on the window. It's not possible to put it up higher, and so we're asking for a larger sign that can be visible to the public and visible to the traffic that's going by. A smaller sign just won't be noticed.
So just as a comparator, perhaps you could speak to the fact that you have a perpendicular sign just adjacent to it. Correct. And it's a smaller size, I would assume. Do you feel that you don't get good visibility or traffic as a result of that sign?
We do get visibility from that sign, but we only get visibility on the name, not on the actual service provided. And so if we were to list the service on that street sign, perpendicular sign provided, the lettering is small and it's just not overly noticed.
Councillor Maracas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, thank you for your comments. I'm just curious, will you be removing the perpendicular sign?
No, it would stay.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other questions to the delegate, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. And our last delegate tonight is the president of our Aurora Senior Association, Mr. Jim Abram. Oh, and Carol.
Hello, Mayor Daw, Acting Chair, Deputy Mayor John Abel, members of council, staff, and guests. My name is Jim Abram of 20 Delane Drive. I'm the president of the Aurora Seniors Association, and I'm joined here by Carol Hedenberg of 25 Underhill Crescent, who's the vice president of the Aurora Seniors Association. And I'd like to acknowledge that we have many members here from our board of directors, volunteers, and valued members of the Aurora Seniors Association here in the audience. First, I'd like to thank you for allowing us to speak as a delegation here at General Committee. Secondly, I'd like to express our sincere appreciation on behalf of all older adults in Aurora for the complete and continued ongoing good relationship and partnership, both in spirit and practice, between the town of Aurora and the Aurora Seniors Association, a not-for-profit charitable organization that exists to serve the needs of older adults in our community. Our main objective is to help relieve things such as social isolation and loneliness through appropriate programs and activities, and to relieve things such as elder frailty, loss of fine motor skills, decline in flexibility, strength, speed of execution, or hand-eye coordination through appropriate sport and fitness activities, and to enhance and encourage development of physical and mental health conditions of the aged. We boast an active, safe, well-equipped center that, including but not limited to, a great wood shop, an active computer learning center. We have a vibrant dance committee, and they'd be here tonight, but they're line dancing tonight. And we have a world-class choir, which you all have heard at various functions throughout town, as well as many other activities. And we're not bad pickleball and bocce players either. We're proud to work together with such organizations as CHATS, Neighborhood Network, South Lake Health Center, among other organizations, to deliver what seniors in Aurora need and desire. The success of our senior center is solely due to the dedication and hard work of both town staff and the many volunteers who contribute their time, energy, expertise, and experience each and every day. We are here today to ratify our renewal agreement with the town of Aurora after recently celebrating our 10-year anniversary at the current location here on John West Way for a further 5 years. After many months of friendly negotiations with Mr. Downey, we believe this renewal agreement serves the interests of the town as well as the many needs of older residents of Aurora in a fair, mutually beneficial way. So thanks again for your attention to this matter. Thanks to Mr. Downey and his staff, and to many others who make the Aurora Senior Centre the envy of many other municipalities in Ontario. Once again proving that Aurora is the best-in-class community with best-in-class senior services. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abram. Could I have someone move to receive? Councillor Humphreys, seconded by Councillor Tom. Are there comments and questions to the delegate? Councillor Gardner, did you have something to say?
I do.
Would you like to ask a question at this time? Proceed.
Thank you. I'm very glad to know that you support this increase because there's quite a jump over a period of 1 year. Yes. So, yes. And that concerned me, and it concerned me, I mean, again, I'm glad you support it, but it concerned me from the point of view of some seniors who may not be able to afford such a big increase in 1 year.
To answer your question through you, Mr. Chair, our annual fee is jumping by $5 for residents and $10 for non-residents. And we benchmark that against what other senior centers throughout the region are charging, and we are certainly well within what is competitive for annual activity, membership and activity fees for our senior center. And again, we offer as many or more programs than other senior centers throughout the region, and the fees that we charge have been ratified by the membership of our senior center.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that. I want to thank you for everything that you do. It is a wonderful senior center, and
thank you.
A lot of people are coming from out of town.
29% of our membership is from out of town, and a lot of those really aren't necessarily using the facility. They use a lot of the town programs, such as the trips and other things that are offered through our facility.
Thank you. But if there is a senior or seniors who cannot afford the fees or for the programs? Does the senior center have, yes, I hear.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is special consideration in those circumstances.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Daw, perhaps you could. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Mayor Daw?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to welcome the first Aurora Brownie group into Chambers tonight. We welcome the ladies. Wave, ladies. This is something that Carrie, one of our receptionists, organizes on a regular basis, bringing in brownies and cubs and sparks and beavers. And also we've got Shauna Young up in the back here, who's one of our employees in Parks and Rec. So we thank you, ladies, for taking time out of your night to come and visit us. We appreciate it. It's nice to have you here. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank
you, Mayor Daw. And I would comment, they're very well-mannered. I hope council is taking note. Mr. Clerk, we are next on the agenda to do presentations by the advisory committee chairs. Are there any chairs here tonight that would like to comment? Seeing none, I'll move to the next. We'll move to considerations of items requiring separate discussion. And Mr. Clerk, I think at this time what I'll do is I'll pull a couple of items that are here. I know the seniors are here. We'll probably do them first. And could I have someone move that we go to item 15? Councillor Tom, Councillor Kim, questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. We'll go to item 15 that was pulled by Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gardner, will you move the item?
I will, thank you.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Gardner, you have the floor.
My concerns have been addressed, so I'm in favor of this.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Thank you very much, Mr. Abram and seniors, for attending. We really do appreciate all that you contribute to our community.
Indeed.
The next item on the poll, it looks like we could do Dr. Moore. If I could have someone move that one forward, it is item 6. Councillor Thompson, seconded. Councillor Humphreys, comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in
To bring forward.
Move it forward?
Bring forward.
All those in favor of moving it forward? Opposed? That carries. We'll go to item 6. That was pulled by Councillor Tom.
I can't move the recommendation.
Cannot.
Cannot.
I'll move it.
Mayor Daw will move it. Seconded. Councillor Maracas. Councillor Tom, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Abel. I would like to support the application. I've been to the property. I met with Dr. Moore on numerous occasions, and I've also taken into account what he said tonight and some other correspondence that we've had, and I'm willing to support the sign variance. So those are my comments at this moment, and I'll see what other members of council have to say about it.
Councillor Tom, thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions? Mayor Daw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These are always a challenge, but I think we also have to take into account the fact that this is in the Heritage District, and I have a concern in terms of what of the look of that sign with respect to the overall look of the area that we're trying to achieve. So I will support the recommendation it is, and hopefully staff could work with Dr. Moore to come up with something that might be a little more compatible in terms of the area.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Chair, my apologies, Deputy Mayor. In terms of the process, has this gone before the Heritage Committee before coming here?
Ms. Van Leeuwen, if I could ask you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it has not gone to the Heritage Advisory Committee. This proposed sign was forwarded to the Planning Division and was reviewed by planning staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think it would be appropriate that if this goes back to staff to work out something that can help the the business owner, because I know they have a wonderful business and a beautiful building on Yonge Street, and actually go through the Heritage Advisory Committee, because we have had several businesses on Yonge Street come to us with variances and have come across, some really great solutions that have met both the heritage requirements and enhancing the business signage so that, the cars going by quickly can't see the business signs very well. But we've had some really great successes. So if this could go back to the staff and, between bylaw, planning, and the proposal put before Heritage, I think that's the right direction to go.
Thank you, Councillor.
And I'd like to move that forward if...
This one. Could we ask her to put that? Yeah. Excuse me. Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Are you still, is that it?
I'd like to move that forward as an amendment as a direction to this motion, this motion.
Could I have a seconder? Councillor Gardner, comments, questions on the amendment?
The motion to
refer this back to committee and staff to come up with alternate Heritage Committee. If I could I recommend it go to Economic and Development? Because we were just talking about the sign bylaw, and I'll comment on that in a minute. So do I have a seconder? Councillor Marakis, did I get that right? No. We've got a seconder as well. All right, comments and questions on the amendment. Councillor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that's a great idea. I'd like to see the Heritage Committee and also EDAC take a look at that, considering they are dealing with the sign bylaw at EDAC. So I think it's a great opportunity for them to work with Dr. Moore and come up with a solution that would better fit within that area. So I look forward to that.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was just looking for clarification. So the amendment is to move or to refer this to the Heritage Advisory Committee and to the Economic Development Advisory Committee.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
For consideration, Councillor Kim.
I would very much be in favor of that amendment. I think the businesses on Yonge Street are challenged enough as it is, and with the high turnover, so there's a constant struggle between economic development on one hand and preserving the heritage and the aesthetics of that area on the other. So I think referring it to EDAC and Heritage would be quite appropriate. Thank you.
I've got everyone just doing one more, and so I'll go Councillor Tom, Councillor Marakis, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And
on the amendment.
On the amendment.
Motion to refer. Excuse me.
I'll support the amendment.
Referral.
The referral. Thank you. I mean, I guess the only reason I was in support of the variance in the first place was that I appreciate this is a heritage home, and that I suppose it does fall within the heritage district of town, and I'm 100% in favor, anyone who knows me around this table, of preserving our heritage buildings, and so certainly I'm okay with it going to the Heritage Advisory Committee and also the Economic Development Advisory Committee. I think that makes perfect sense. But I will point out, I mean, there is a strip mall right across the street. There's a multi-story building right across the street that were in no way heritage buildings, and so if this sign takes away from the heritage character of the neighborhood, then certainly those buildings aren't doing too much to enhance the heritage character of the neighborhood either. So, having said that, I will support the referral to both of those committees so that we can come up with a solution that both allows Dr. Moore to expand his business in town and flourish in town, but also that respects the heritage of the town of Aurora.
Thank you. Councillor Marakis and Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to point out one more thing. I think I'd prefer maybe if we kind of add in a time frame, like, because there's a little bit of an urgency. I mean, this has been kind of going for a long period of time, so the faster we can get this resolved, the better, I think, for everyone involved. So I would, maybe if we can kind of put a time frame that would work for both committees and then to come back to us.
I'll let the clerk speak to that. It certainly seems reasonable to me.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, we can certainly put a time frame on it. However, I would remind, if I might, General Committee, that most committees are on a every 2-month meeting cycle.
Not those two.
I said most committees. So EDAC is generally meets every month, but not always. Heritage does. So if you're going to put a time frame on it, I would suggest the time frame be at the next meeting of those committees. So that way we can work within the calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and I think those are both coming up in December. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support the referral. My concern was about setting precedent in the heritage area, and hopefully with the promenade plan we'll be able to redevelop that area to be more in keeping with the heritage feel. So I'm very happy to hear the comments around the table and Ms. Van Leeuwen nodding her head. So thank you.
Thank you, and if I could comment, I asked for this to be put up, and the reason I would refer this to Heritage is obviously this enhances the view of the Heritage building. So if we put it at the 2 meters, we'd actually be covering up the elevation and what we are trying to display. We're talking at the economic development, and I just specifically asked on Yonge Street heritage buildings, could there be a different set of guidelines, because it is a different sort of economic driver and a different sort of area. So all those things would lead to, we should have and take care to enhance not just the heritage, but encourage the development of business along those areas. So thank you very much, Council. If there's no further comments, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. We're going to try and get that done to committee for November, if possible, and so it comes back in December, if possible. The next item, and I'm polling and I'm looking, and I know we've got the tree bylaw, so I won't hold them anymore. I thank you for your patience, but the other ones were relatively quick, and I sense that this tree bylaw may be a bit longer. So the first item we're going to go to, unless there's another item that we sense is going to be quick. I don't? Okay. Item 1 was pulled by Councillor Marakis, was to be received, and Council to give direction. Councillor Marakis?
Do I have to provide that direction? No, I'll just move it as is right now.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess just quickly, as far as when it speaks to the exemption of golf courses, I don't feel that we should have a straight-out exemption. I know that the region does speak to, I guess in essence, they do have some restrictions, or they have some guidelines and principles that the golf courses follow when they're a certain size, and I appreciate that. I would like to see us kind of have something similar. There are many municipalities. Richmond Hill has some restrictions. Markham doesn't expressly exempt golf courses from their bylaw. Under section 4.2 of their bylaw, it requires a tree management plan and application process for tree removal on golf courses. I think that's a good way to look at it, and maybe use that as an example that our staff can take a look at what Markham's doing and what Richmond Hill's doing. Another example is the City of London, Ontario. They look at each tree individually as far as the species, and some are protected and are never allowed to be cut down unless they're diseased or they're a hazard, and others are considered an invasive species, and they're exempt from any permits or any bylaw. So I think there's many examples where the town staff can look at different municipalities and what they're doing, and kind of bring those principles within our bylaw and give us something that's a little bit more stronger and protects our natural areas and forested areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate Councillor Marakis' comments. I think they're cool. Now, from what I recognize, from what I remember from the last time this came up, I think town staff put in just a tremendous amount of effort behind the report, and they brought forward different options, a proposed option, and then different options to the proposed option in each of those 3 categories: trees in heritage district, trees on larger residential private properties, and then trees on golf courses. And I think where we got stuck, and I could see it happening again, we start going through one by one and we start voting out and in these options. And while it's really amazing coming before us this way, I don't probably tell tonight it's not going to work again if we're going to get to that portion of this draft bylaw. But what I'd love to see a more restrictive tree bylaw. I believe initially, and I haven't changed at all, that I kind of agreed with the initial options for each of these 3 categories. But there may not be that sense around the table based on residential feedback perspectives and business perspectives. So I love the fact that, you know, if we can go back and take a look at best practices across existing municipalities and maybe come with not so much of a variance, because I think we're going to get hung up. That may be not appropriate. I'm not the tree expert. But anyway, from my perspective today, and I know we're not providing much direction at the moment, probably have to talk a little bit more about it. But I'd like to see this.
Yes, they are.
If this is, you know, if this were going to go, fine. If not, I'd like to see it come back with a more of a sort of a blanket proposal for each of those these categories, and taking sort of the best practices in each of the options and put it before us so we can make a decision once and for all. I think that's just my 2 cents right now.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Councillor Gardner? Is this the second time?
First time. Thank you,
Councillor.
Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm looking at page 3 and page 4. I would. I was going to agree with Councillor Humphreys, but I think from what I read in the staff report that the committee that was struck worked so hard on this and were looking at all other available bylaws at the time. I see Mr. Tree nodding, and I don't believe that very much has changed since. So I would say that we go through the 3 options, the 3 different areas on the chart with the options, and just see if we can come up with something. With respect to the mayor's point, it's a very good point. I may have a small property, somebody else may have a large property, and we're still restricted to removing the same number of trees. It doesn't seem fair. So there is an option, trees on larger residential private property, on page 4. One of the options is, and I don't know how easy or hard it would be to enforce, but there is option number 2, so that it goes by the size. On the larger properties, it goes by the size of the properties. So a larger property could remove more trees. And to me, that seems fair. I have changed my mind on that since 2013. I wasn't voting for that option originally, but to me, it seems fair that we should do that. With respect to the heritage trees, I voted to protect all of the trees in the heritage area, and if anybody wants to cut down a tree, then they have to come to the town. And with respect to the golf courses, I do remember that the last meeting that nobody from there, I believe someone from the golf course, one of the golf courses was in the council chamber, but nobody made any delegations. So I have to assume, and I haven't heard from any golf courses since then, that maybe this is the way of the world. We have 3 items on our agenda that are dealing with preserving and increasing our tree canopy. So maybe that is just the way it's going, and the golf courses are accepting it. Anyway, nobody is here tonight from the golf courses, so I can't see any objection. So I would go with
well, Councillor Gardner, except what's in your report from the superintendents of the golf courses. There are objections, but otherwise they're not present.
You're right, Mr. Deputy Mayor, but I do remember when we were in the 2011, 2012, and 2013 part of the process, I remember the golf courses were here, And I remember they spoke, and I remember they were against it. And nobody has come forward to delegate tonight, and they might come forward next week. I don't know.
Fair enough, Councillor.
So those are my comments. I would go with the suggestion from staff on the heritage trees. I would go with option number 2, unless staff can say that it would be completely onerous to enforce that on the larger properties. And I'd go with a suggestion from staff on the golf courses.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Humphries, you've spoken once. Do you want to wait till everyone else talks before you go a second and final time? Yes. Thank you. I'm prepared to say a few remarks. I'm sure people are going to want to comment on it. If there's no one else, I'll just ask quickly if Samantha can put some pictures on the top. If you refer to your report, because the reports are black and white pictures taken in the winter 3 years ago. I went with the superintendent at Beacon Hall, and he is most interested in what is going on, but he doesn't have the time to come and speak. He has said his bit. It's on the record. So this refers to your page 87, and it just shows that there are, I changed it because the pages were different than the report we got in October. That's the confusion. What I just want to illustrate was that there is replanting. If you look at 83 in our report, we tried to go to the same spot and to show that there are trees replanted. The next picture. This is a picture taken from page 87 in our report. I stand corrected. Page 90. So this shows you the difference in 3 years of what's happened. They took down some trees in front of the green. It's hard to see on the black and white, but you can see right now how beautiful it looks when you look at in full foliage as compared to the starkness of black and white. And this is almost the exact same location. There are trees removed, and you can see what they've done is they've just improved the fairway width and maintained the ecology. Next. Thank you, Samantha. This is looking down the fairway where the wood was all left in a pile. It refers to page 91. Of course, 91 looks just awful. It looks like they clear-cut it and they left that vacant, and it always was a fairway. They just brought the trees out and put them down there in the winter. And the advantage of putting it in the winter, of course, is the ground is frozen. You can move machines very easily without damaging the grass. If you tried that in the springtime, you would ruin your fairways and your greenery. Next picture. That's looking from the golf course into the houses there. And so you can see that when the full foliage is there, you can't see into people's homes. Mind you, if you looked in the winter out there, you would see the beautiful golf course and 260 acres of just pure, pristine wildlife. And I'll get to the wildlife in a minute, but I just want to sort of see that pictures can tell you a different story. So you can enjoy your privacy of your home on these estate homes and not see the golf course. And then, of course, when the leaves fall, you can see through the trees if you come down your property line, and you can see what's going on the golf course. Although it must be awfully quiet, well, except with the chainsaws when they do their work. I checked with Beacon Hall. They have not cut down any trees since 2012. And you can see that they have not destroyed the woodlands. Next picture, please, Samantha. This is where I work. It's called Westview Golf Course. This is what it looked like. It was a farmer's field. And this is in 1960. And the next picture is from the same spot. This is the 9th hole at Homestead, one I usually par on the way in. And you can see that all the trees have all been planted by the golf course, and they have created a woodlot. And I'll ask, and I didn't bring it, but this is, Mr. Tree may know it, this is the economic value of our natural assets that was done by Jim Kyle, and it was presented at Clean Air, celebrated by Christine Naguio. just last month. And in it, it shows maps of woodlands and then golf courses. And guess what? Woodlands are on golf courses. And golf courses are recognized as one of the agents in the urban forest study adopted by Vancouver in 2014 as well, as a way to urbanize a canopy and assist, and golf courses are one of the strategies they move forward. Golf courses also are recognized and certified as Audubons, which are natural wildlife sanctuaries. And so we have 100 acres at Highland Gate, and I've probably heard from about 60 people about pictures, the wildlife, what we're going to lose when we lose that golf course. And it's completely surrounded by residential, but everyone tells us that that's a wildlife sanctuary. Beacon Hall is 260 acres. It is just massive, and no houses, except some of the houses you just saw there, you can't see, they don't even board. The wildlife that they have there, and I work at Westview, we see foxes, coyotes, deers, turtles we protect. When they come out to nest, we know they come out every June. They're like clockwork, and we put bumpers around them while they nest their eggs, so they're undisturbed. There's wild turkeys. And then there's the regular great birds and things that you see. They have wildlife protected areas, ponds, so there's geese, muskrats. My favorite is the red-tailed hawk, which stands about 2.5 feet. They're magnificent birds. Anyways, I won't go on about golf courses, except that they're great protectors of sanctuaries for wildlife and recognized for practices that they do. Samantha, if I could ask you, we'll go through briefly, quickly, the next pictures. This is my backyard, and the next one. I show this in my backyard because I had 4 trees when I moved in, and they grew massively to 40 feet. And the roots were competing for water, and they ruined my grass, and they just jumped out of the ground, and there was no soil coverage, and the water was just rolling off. And so I got an arborist in, and the arborist said, well, they're healthy, I can't recommend you cut them down. I said, what if I cut 2 of them down? They said, they'll all fall down. And I said, well, what am I to do? They said, well, eventually they're going to get blown down because they're starving for water. So I made the big move before the bylaw came in, and I cut 4 of them down. So what I ended up with is this beautiful garden that we enjoy. We planted 2 trees to replace the 4 and 60 cedars, which are all fallen in. So I eliminated a risk of them falling down. I improved the lot, I improved my property value, and I enhanced our living quarters in our house. So if you had only allowed me 2 trees, I wouldn't be able to do this. Next picture, please. This is a heritage tree. It's by our cultural center. Councillor Kim and I were walking by. We saw the tag on it. We wondered what it was. I asked Director Downey how many heritage trees we have. We have 3. We have 3 heritage trees. And this is a magnificent red oak, I believe, or bur oak. And last picture, I think. Thank you very much, Samantha. This is my pride and joy. It's called an autumn blaze. The town put it there 5 years ago to replace the red oak that I lost on my front lawn. We have got red oaks all down our street, and they're all suffering from some sort of chemical deficiency, but we're losing them one by one. Mine was one of the first ones, and I thank the town for removing the dead one. They left me some firewood, which I appreciated, and I got this autumn blaze, and it's just my pride and joy. I had asked for it specifically, and they found one in their inventory to provide me that good, healthy tree. So that's basically my display. I'm trying to allude that we have a tree bylaw. We don't have to be any more restrictive. We really don't have a problem with golf courses. The problems we don't have problems with golf courses. They're actually enhancing our urban canopy, our wildlife sanctuary. They're recognized, they're certified, they practice best uses in water management. They are sanctuary for just an amazing amount of wildlife. Their basic rule of thumb is, how are you going to enforce a number with different golf courses? I can appreciate the comment that they can butcher them and clear them so that it enhances development, but that's the last thing they want to do. 2 of them are on the moraine. They're not going to develop that in any means. So I'll just wrap up with that, and I thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'll ask for any further comments. Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you for the old school slideshow that we just had.
I don't know PowerPoint, so.
Did they call those slideshows back in the day? I don't know.
They call them
overhead projector. I guess going along what the process, I guess, that Councillor Gartner outlined is talking about options and stuff. I had a few questions. So, for specifically to the heritage tree table, which is on page 7, the proposed bylaw would be to restrict any tree to be removed to they'd have to come forward for a permit. So I suppose I ask through you, Deputy Mayor, to Mr. Downey, the Heritage District that we're talking about, that is the Northwest Heritage District?
Northeast.
Northeast, sorry. Northeast?
Mr. Downey?
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Thank you. So obviously, I mean, we have a wealth of heritage buildings in our town. We all know, I'm sure the councillors from last term know very well that only the northeast portion of that area is a district, a heritage district. So technically, someone who lived bordering Town Park would be currently under the just run-of-the-mill tree bylaw that every other place in town is. Is that correct, Mr. Downey?
Mr. Downey?
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay, so, I mean, that's interesting. I know there's not much we can do about that, but I suppose that you should have a certain set of guidelines for a heritage district, because we do have one, and I just think it's a little bit challenging for me to understand how we can have more heritage homes in a cluster, which is in the southeast portion of our heritage area, that wouldn't be covered by the same kind of restrictions. But I suppose my preference would be to maybe make the heritage tree district something that more aligns with what I guess our official plan or promenade study calls the heritage area of the town. But I don't know, that wasn't really provided as an option, so it's more of a comment, I suppose. And with respect to the options that are presented, this was put together by Parks and Rec, so I suppose I'll ask Mr. Downey again. Option number 4, how did staff come up with the option of a 20 centimeter in diameter? And, you know, what does that look like? I mean, I know there's some graphs, but like, you know, is that 20 centimeters? I mean, saplings are quite small, but 20 centimeters seems fairly large. So perhaps you can give me some
Mr. Downey, if you know
guidance on that.
How to convert centimeters to inches, that'd be a good start. I
Or
appreciate it.
just how you came up with 20 centimeters.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if you recall, the previous conversation was regarding best practices and where other municipalities had imposed or what they had identified within their bylaw. So that was a measurement that was identified in some other bylaws when we were looking at preparing our initial bylaw, and 20 centimeters seemed like a reasonable diameter in which to identify a tree.
Thank you. I just thought, you know, get a little clarification on how 20 centimeters was come upon. So with respect to the heritage area, I think I've made my comments fairly clear. I would be in favor of option 4, something that's a little less restrictive. You don't need to come to the town with respect to saplings or very small trees, as long as they're replanting. But you still need, with those bigger character heritage trees that are many, many years old, I think are the ones that we really want to address in those areas of town, because they do add to the character of the neighborhoods. And then my last comment would be on the heritage side of things, is that, you know, perhaps there's a way to look at not necessarily just the heritage district, but those areas of towns where there's a large cluster of heritage homes. And being on the heritage committee, I know that a lot of the applications for that come through our committee are not in the northeast district, but in the southeast part or in the southwest part of town, which also have a large amount of heritage homes, and many people would consider in town who don't know what district ends where, that it's the heritage part of Aurora. With respect to the larger properties table, which is on page 8, I also support option 2, which is some sort of a scaling depending on the size of your property. I think that makes sense. A small property and a large property should have perhaps variances between them, and I think that makes it fair. If you own a huge property, that you might be able to remove a few more trees, and I agree with the scaling. Again, is that something that was a best practice from another municipality through you to Mr. Downey?
Mr. Downey, please.
Option 2, that is.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Actually, no. This was a Made in Aurora solution. It certainly came from the conversations that were around the council table. Concerns raised with regards to how many trees could be removed without any consideration for the lot size. So we had proposed a metric on that and had identified that average lot is 0.25 meters. Anything larger than that, as a multiple of that, you should be also be able to remove the same multiple of trees. So for every 0.25 hectares of property, you get to remove 2 trees.
Okay, thank you. And so I would support then option 2. And then I'll move on to the golf courses. And this one caused me a little bit of a lot of thought. I didn't expect like I said, the slideshow, which was very illuminating. But I golf quite a lot in the summertime, and I've been on golf courses, as many people have, for many summers of my existence on the earth. And I'll bring up a recent example, King Valley, which is in King Township. It's on Dufferin. And I've been lucky enough to be invited to golf there. I'm not a member there. And a few years back, they had a number of problems with the quality of the greens. And in fact, the quality was so bad that a lot of members were leaving the golf course. And golf courses that we often forget, as Councillor Abel mentioned, they have a kind of an altruistic purpose, which is to be woodlands and sanctuaries for animals and all sorts of other things. But at the end of the day, they also are businesses that need to make money. And people who enjoy golf like to, when they do pay a substantial amount of money, they like to golf on greens that roll true and everything else. So King Valley is a beautiful golf course. It has many trees. I don't even know what the acreage is or the amount of trees. I wouldn't even venture a guess. However, yeah, it would be hard to quantify. And so they had to remove trees because what was happening was the shading wasn't allowing for the grass to grow adequately for golf. And that had happened because the trees that they had planted around their course over 25 years had grown up to such a high level that they were now encroaching on the sunlight for the greens. So they removed some trees. And the membership was happy because the quality of the greens improved. They did not remove every tree. They didn't clear cut the golf course because that would be counterintuitive to golf. I mean, I'm sure everyone's heard the term cow pasture. Councillor Abel, he put a photograph of Westview. I think Westview looks much more attractive now that they've grown trees as opposed to the cow pasture that it once was. Don't tell the superintendent that I called it that. And cow pastures generally are on the lower end of the economic scale in terms of golf courses. They generally do not get as much play. And courses like King Valley, their membership expects a certain feel, a certain look to the golf course. That's why people golf. They want to get outdoors. And so to me, it seems counterintuitive that a golf course would remove so many trees that it would be clear-cut, which would go against the narrative that I just described. They want people to come out and enjoy themselves and generally be shielded from, if it is in an urban area, from the urban area that they live in or walk in or whatever. And King Valley improved their greens, and their membership didn't leave. And I'm sure it would be preferable for most people to have golf courses than, as Councillor Abel mentioned, the current scenario that's happening at Highland Gate, where golf courses are no longer economically viable, and they decide they apply to be developed into houses. And so if the removal of a couple of trees facilitates further golf by a golf course as opposed to a development, I know in Beacon Hall's case it's not the same, I would be much more inclined to allow them to remove the trees for the enjoyment of their patrons as opposed to that redesignation. So I'll probably have some more thoughts on this before we get to council next week, between whether we stay with the status quo or go with the recommendation. But I just thought I'd illuminate my thoughts on golf courses. Removing trees. I don't believe that it's in their best interest to clear cut their forests because in the end of the day, no one would golf there. So those are my thoughts for now. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Mayor Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Tom mentioned saplings. I think I was a sapling when we started this tree discussion bylaw. And I'm
going on for years.
I'm feeling a little more gnarly these days. I'm not sure. Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Downey. First of all, Mr. Downey, I want to know why the deputy mayor has a nicer tree on his front lawn than I have on mine. You don't need to answer that one tonight, okay? But I think there's an issue there.
I can tell you.
You asked.
No, I'll tell you later.
Mr. Chair, to a serious question, though, to Mr. Downey, through you. How many tree cutting permits have you issued in the last, I don't know, year?
Mr. Downey?
So you, Mr. Chair, 15 in the last 10 years.
Okay, 15 in the last 10 years. So my comment to that, Mr. Chair, is are we trying to solve a problem that does not exist?
Thank you, Mayor.
Well, I'm not finished.
I know you're not, but I thank you for that remark.
I got a couple of, and I do thank you for the work you did on the photos. I think I appreciate that. In the Mr. Downey's report tonight on the U4 recommendation, I can't even pronounce the acronym that Mr. Tree came up with. Item 7, evaluate and develop the strategic steps required to increase the proportion of large mature trees in an urban forest. Action plan. The current tree protection bylaw is an effective tool in the preservation of all trees greater than 20 centimeters in diameter. So in this report, the current bylaw we have is defined as effective. So again, are we solving a problem that we do not have? Comment was made, we're looking for a more restrictive bylaw. I'm not sure why council's looking for more restrictive bylaws when we refused, not that long ago, to enforce our own encroachment criteria when we have residents encroaching on town property. So we want more restrictive bylaws one place, but we won't enforce what we have in another place. So we need to be consistent in how we want to enforce our bylaws. There was reference to the online survey. An online survey, while is a valid expression of people's opinion, is not a statistically valid survey. If you want to do a statistically valid survey, you go outside and you get a company that does that. So while it's informative, it is not a statistically valid survey. There's been comments on the tree canopy. Ian Buchanan, who, Mr. Downey, do you know Mr. Buchanan's title at the region, perchance?
Mr. Downey?
Or Mr. Tree?
He's the tree guy at the region. That's what we call him.
He's essentially the chief arborist of the region. He gave us a report a couple of months ago talking about the increase in the tree canopy in our area. And Mr. Buchanan actually lives in Aurora, so he is very familiar with what goes on in our town. So with those comments, Mr. Chair, I would like to put an amendment on the floor because we're looking for council to provide direction. And I don't feel confident, or I don't feel comfortable putting an amendment on the floor with respect to trees in a heritage district. I will let other people look to that, but I will definitely put an amendment on the floor with respect to the trees on larger residential private properties. And I will admit that I have a half acre, and which is why I have since the start cannot understand why a number of 2 trees was picked. It makes no sense to me. So I would go with option 2. So the amendment, Mr. Chair, is to permit owners of larger properties, 0.25 hectare or greater, to remove 4 trees per 0.25 hectare in a 12-month period. So whereas Mr. Downey's report is 2 trees per 0.25 hectare, the amendment I'm putting on the floor, and that's correct terminology, through you, Mr. Chair, to the clerk.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair, I would suggest, if I might, that there's a piece of this amendment puzzle missing. And I understand that you're proposing option 2 is set out in report PR 14-004 pertaining to the trees on the larger private property. However, that recommendation was in relation to the draft tree bylaw that was attached to that same report. So I would suggest that there has to be some direction whether you want that exemption included in the current tree bylaw, or if you wanted staff to bring forward that draft bylaw that was included with that report with that change.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Chair, I would suggest that then to direct staff to incorporate that amendment into the draft tree protection bylaw, which would then come back to council. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
And would I get a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Thompson, thank you.
And I think I've spoken enough on that particular one.
Are there comments on the amendment? Councillor Humphreys?
Unless I'm reading this wrong, no special protection measures not more than 4 trees greater than 20 centimeters in diameter can be removed 12-month period without obtaining a permit, which is the existing bylaw right now. So are we recommending just to leave it? Sorry, I'm just.
Good clarification.
Because the current bylaw does say 4.
I'll ask Mr. Downey if he can
And I don't,
answer your
so
question.
I'm telling you, we're going down that same rat hole we did last time.
That's right. Sorry, Mr. Downey, I thought I had you on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll try my best. The existing bylaw permits you to remove not more than 4 trees, regardless of how large your lot is. So if you have a half acre, 10 acre, wouldn't make any difference, you get 4 trees. 20 centimeters or greater, 8 inches, in case you're wondering. There you go. The new bylaw says that you can't remove any more than 2. So we've reduced the number from 4 to 2, regardless of the size of the lot. So it doesn't make any difference whether you have a half acre or 20 acres, you can't remove any more than 2 trees. Okay?
Councillor?
I understand that clearly.
Okay.
It's what Mr. Mayor is asking
So I was just
for.
about to get to that.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Downey?
So the options that council was concerned with was, well, if I have a larger lot, why can't I remove more trees? Doesn't make sense. I mean, if there's a person with a small lot, an eighth of an acre, they get to remove 2 trees, and someone who has 20 acres still only gets to remove 2 trees. That doesn't seem right. Mr. Downey, come back with an option that deals with the size of lot. So we have determined that a fairly large lot within the town is 0.25 hectares. And we would impose the bylaw, the new bylaw, stating that any lot 0.25 hectares or less would only be able to remove 2 trees. However, every multiple of 0.25 hectares of area greater, so if you had a lot that was 0.75 hectares, you could remove 6 trees. 1 hectare, 8 trees. And that's why that option was presented.
Thank you, Mr.
So
Downey.
the mayor has recommended that option. I apologize. So he's taken the position that he now wants to remove 4 trees instead of 2 trees on that 0.25 hectare lot.
I think we may have to go to a workshop. Councillor Humphreys, you're good. Councillor Thompson, on the amendment?
I was just going to say, has anybody seen that movie Groundhog Day?
We live it.
It very much reminds me of the circle we did last term, and I think for those that are coming through this the first time, perhaps you know why it didn't get resolved last term. You know, my only comment is that whatever the number is, you know, I think that however we finally decide on something, it needs to be applied fairly and equitably, be it a commercial property, a private property, across the board. That was the issue last term, and so you got to figure out what is the right metric, and then you need to apply it equally throughout the community.
Thank you. Councillor Kim, welcome.
I was just busy learning and absorbing this all in. So I'm just looking at the following item as well, which is the tree compensation plan. Policy, or sorry, the tree removal, pruning, and compensation policy.
Okay, that is a bit off topic. We are talking about the amendment.
No,
but go ahead.
It's hard for me to vote for this because if we allow just trees to be cut and there's no compensation, I'm just wondering, maybe that should have come first. Does the compensation policy come into effect, whether it be golf courses or private lots? Is there compensation here?
Mr. Downey?
To you, Mr. Chair, the tree protection bylaw deals with situations where there is no planning application. So if you have a planning application, a development application, the tree bylaw does not apply. The compensation policy that you are discussing only applies to development applications. Okay. So unless a golf course was going forward for development, the tree compensation policy would not apply.
Okay. Mr. Downey, if I could, in the case 3 years ago with Beacon Hall, did they replace any of those plant trees for any of the ones they cut down?
I don't recall. Yeah, they did. I think they did, but I don't know how many. But yes, but it didn't fall. It didn't fall within a tree compensation policy.
No, but
it was simply negotiations with the golf course with regards to replanting trees in a more appropriate location for the golf course operation.
That's correct. Thank you. Councillor Marakis. You've gone twice. Okay. Mayor Dove, excuse me.
I get confused quite often between hectares and acres. So 0.25 hectares is 1/2 acre, correct, Mr. Downey?
Mr. Downey?
There are 2.473 acres in a hectare.
Councillor Tom's got the conversion.
I just did the conversion on Google. 0.25 hectares is 0.617763 acres.
Just over a half, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
2/3.
Thank you. That's why I asked.
Anyone confused? We're all good on the amendment?
Yeah, this is the amendment. So the amendment before us is to basically for option 2, but for 4 per 0.25 hectares as opposed to 2.
Yes.
Which is essentially, I mean, right now, any lot size under the current bylaw can remove 4 trees over 20 centimeters per year without requiring a permit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So this one would allow for anyone who has a lot 0.25 hectares or larger for 4 per 0.25. And I know, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned that this might be solving a problem that doesn't exist, which may be true. But right now, the current bylaw states you can remove 4 trees. If you have a 1/2 acre lot or a 1/3 of an acre lot, I would suspect that most lots of that nature in Aurora have maybe 4 trees max. So if you wanted to remove all 4, well, okay, I could be corrected, but or let's say there's 8.
You will be.
Then it takes 2 years to remove all the trees, when you don't need a permit for that. So the more that you allow, that doesn't have to come under the radar. If you want to remove all the trees on your property and you had 12, all you had to do is wait 3 years, remove 4 trees per year, and you're good to go. You can get rid of them all. So I think the reason that you make it smaller is because then if you do have that intent, you'll have to wait longer, or you'll have to come to council to justify why you need to remove the trees, which I think might be, some might call that restrictive or onerous. Some might call that responsible if you want to retain the canopy. And perhaps we would have had more people come to council and ask for an exemption or things of that nature. I know Mr. Downey said there was 15 such instances in 10 years. But if it had been what they're currently proposing, maybe there would have been 50. We don't know. So I don't know if it's quite apples to apples, and I don't think I support the amendment.
You don't think?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree totally with Councillor Tom. I won't be supporting the amendment. I think we should, leave it at 2. I think is good enough. I think that's more than enough and more than fair to, if someone needs to remove 2 trees, so be it. They can do that. To make it 4, I agree with Councillor Tom. The size of the lots right now, we'd be allowing 4 trees, and that might be all they have. So they could basically clear cut their lot, and there'd be no trees left. So I'm not in support of the amendment.
Councillor Kim. Coming back to the amendment?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think my last speech was 0.25 of a speech, so I think I do agree with Councillor Marakis and Tom in that once a tree is gone, it's gone. And I think the examples we gave, namely yourself, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and the way that you handled your situation, you're very responsible. Some are responsible, some are not, or some just want to eradicate their their yard of 4 trees because they don't like the shade. But I think if to err on the side of caution, I'd like to leave it as 2, and if someone has a good reason to cut down more, whether it be because it's ruining their lawn or it's killing something or it's a hazard to people or the house, then I think it should be a simple enough process to ask for an exemption. So I don't think I can support the amendment.
Just for clarification, I do believe they would just ask for a permit and pay money. So they would just pay money to cut the 3rd one down, or wait the next year. Or they could come to council and ask for to be amended. But the amendment is still on. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Chair. Just following up on what you just said, through you to Mr. Downey or perhaps Ms. Van Leeuwen, I'm not sure. So somebody could come and just pay money and cut down more trees, they wouldn't have to justify it in any way?
Who would like to answer that? Mr. Downey, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the applicant would have to make an application. There's a permitted application, and there would have to be a reasoning and justification for cutting the trees. We may ask for an arborist report to identify perhaps the health of the tree if we had some additional questions. But ultimately, with the new bylaw, it would be up to myself or the director to determine whether or not the permit is granted. If the applicant does not agree with the decision, then they can appeal before council.
Thank you. I stand corrected. Councillor Gardner?
That answers my question. Thank you. So it's not a committee, or it's Mr. Director who is the one who says yes or no? Am I understanding that correctly?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair. It's ultimately the decision of the director. Don't get me wrong. However, we have certainly trained staff that would be looking at the application and making recommendations to me with regards to whether or not this should or should not be granted.
Thank you. Just to follow up, if you would. Would that be through the Parks Department?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to call the question on the amendment after Mayor Daw talks. Mayor Daw?
Thank you. I find some of the discussion interesting. So let's go back to 1988 when I bought my property. There was, how many trees on it do you think?
None.
15.
Okay, so Councillor Gardner says 0. Councillor Abel says 50. There was one, and that tree was supplied by the town of Aurora. That's the tree. It's still there on the front boulevard. I put all the other trees in, all of them, and there's a lot, and you're welcome to come over to my house and look at them. I put them all in. So what gives this, out of curiosity, what gives this council the right to tell me I can't take them out? No one's ever explained that to me.
It's environmentally friendly.
Well, if I didn't put the trees in the first place, so am I being unenvironmentally friendly if I don't put them in the first? Well, that's what you're saying. You're saying if I had 4 trees, I can go in and clear cut and I'm a horrible person. That's what I heard. There was no trees there. I put them all in. I did a really bad job, by the way. They're too close together and they look like crap. That's why I want to get rid of some trees. So I don't need an arborist to see a tree going like that and know that it's not in good shape. So it's a ludicrous discussion. To say that because you can take out 4 trees or 2 trees or 1 tree, you're clear cutting. That's ludicrous. Most people are very responsible. And the ones who aren't responsible, like the clown down on Yonge Street, who took out how many acres of trees? Do you think he came to the town to ask for a permit? I don't think so. Most people in this town are responsible. We're not. We've spent, I don't know how much time on this item over the last 4 years. That's not responsible. I'm just trying to bring some sanity to this. I don't think I'm working.
All right, I can appreciate your frustration, Mr. Mayor. We have been identified as having the best canopy coverage in the region. We don't have a problem with our residents and trees. But to be environmentally conscious, we're going to make it this is how we're going to show how we're environmentally. I would say, let's stop driving cars and plant trees. That would show environmental. That's a positive step. This is not. On the amendment. What's the amendment, please? The amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the amendment will read, and this is going to be wordy, I do apologize, that staff be directed to prepare and report back on a revised draft tree protection bylaw, substantially in the form as attached to report PR 14-004 with the following changes. Trees on a larger property, option 2, which reads, permit owners of larger properties, 0.25 hectares or greater, to remove 2 trees per 0.25 hectares in a 12-month period. 4, my apologies, yes. Yes. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Are we all clear on that? I'm not.
Do you want me to?
No, I think you've done your job. No one's asking for it. I'm going to ask for a vote. All those in favor? Councillor Humphreys?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so we're voting on this option. We're changing that option a little bit. Just from a staff perspective, they've done a lot of work on this with the committees. I know we're talking about it again and again. But before I vote on this, we're increasing that percentage of trees to 4 from 2 per the formula used here. Where did staff get the formula in the first place? And is that a best practice
All right,
approach?
we're going to start
ask.
all over again.
That's okay. I told you this was going to happen at the beginning of the conversation. This is what happened last time. It's going to happen this time.
Councillor Humphreys, thank you. And we have a tree bylaw. It's effective. We don't have a problem. But we're going to go at this one more time. Mr. Downey? You can answer this?
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Chair. First of all, with regards to the bylaw and the number of trees we had identified in the bylaw, that came from a number of discussions we had with a number of different municipalities and the number of trees that were removed. When we presented the draft to council, the discussion then came about with regards to the size of the lot. So that's a made in Aurora concern. No other bylaw that we are aware of deals with this concern. So we have, as staff, determined what we felt was a average sized lot, or perhaps a larger than average sized lot within the municipality, and identified 0.25 hectares as what we felt was a reasonable standard. And we imposed the new standard that was identified in the bylaw on that 0.25 hectares. That's how we came up with the number.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that very much. It brings me back to where this all started, and I won't be voting in favor of that.
All right, well, that's great. I'm going to call a vote. Good. On the amendment, Councillor Gardner?
I'm not clear about what Mr. Height said. Could you please repeat what we're voting on?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps I'll paraphrase what the amendment is. The amendment currently on the table is that staff are going to be directed to report back with a bylaw substantially in the form or similar to the one that was attached to the January 14th, 2014 report with at least now at this point one change where permit owners of larger properties, where that's 0.25 hectares or greater, would be permitted to remove 4 trees per 0.25 hectares in a 12-month period.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. My understanding is from the motion that was passed by Council that I presented that the matter of the draft tree protection bylaw be placed on a future general committee meeting for discussion and direction. We have the draft tree bylaw before us with options from staff. Are we not simply voting on whether we want to endorse the draft tree bylaw, and if we do, how? Why are we sending it back to staff again?
Councillor, we were talking on the amendment. You asked for
But that is
clarification on the amendment.
that in the amendment, it's saying that we're sending it back to staff again.
We'll ask the clerk for clarification once more.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair, I would suggest, and it would be my advice, that the amendment has to go in this format because staff would actually have to make a change to the draft bylaw with incorporating any of these changes and come back to council for its consideration. Council would have difficulty adopting a incomplete bylaw that where paragraphs might have to change with different information. So the proper approach, it is my suggestion, is that staff would come back, assuming this amendment gets passed, with the bylaw substantially as attached to that 2014 report with the change that's being proposed.
Does that clear things up, Councillor?
It does not. My understanding is we have a
You're right.
draft tree protection bylaw before us. We as a council are deciding whether we want it and how we want it to read.
Councillor,
We've been presented with options and we are just deciding on an option.
are you
We would
calling
have
this
to
out
come
of
back
order?
to council to pass the bylaw. Is that what you're saying, just to pass the bylaw, or a report back so we're going around again on this?
Mr. Clerk, I am just about at my wit's end. I want to call a vote on the amendment.
Excuse me, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
I am also at my wit's end.
Okay,
So that's two of us.
good.
So we'll just have to be
I have a
patient
vote?
and follow the process.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
There's too many jokes going on around this table. This is a serious matter. We'll see what the residents think about this.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to call a vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? That amendment fails. All right. So, I would like to ask a question if I could. Enforcement on the trees in a golf course. I see it as someone that would have to patrol the golf courses on a daily basis, maybe one course on a Monday and the next course on another day. And I would like to know if we're going to have to hire someone to do that, and if so, how can I apply for that position? How would you enforce the tree bylaw on golf courses?
To you, Mr. Chair, based on complaints. That is currently how we respond to tree violations. Typically, we receive a complaint, we work with Parks Division, we attend the site, we take measurements, we do our investigation, and we take any necessary action.
So you would go onto the golf course to the specific hole identified in the complaint and pay a visit and do an investigation and proceed from there?
That's correct.
Thank you. And through Mr. Downey, I just wanted to ask you on trees in a golf course, if there's a windstorm and they knock down a bunch of trees, do they count as part of the trees that are provided in a year?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, sick and hazardous trees are exempt.
Sick and hazardous trees are exempt. Thank you very much. That's good. And is there any consideration to the size of, like we just had an amendment for consideration of private property lots and how many trees they're coming down. Is there any consideration for golf courses and the acreage and the number of trees? Or is it just if you have 1 million trees or you have 15 trees, you're only allowed so many? Is there any consideration in the bylaw for that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the only consideration with regards to golf courses is in the options, and the options are related to the size of the golf course, not how many trees are on the golf course.
Thank you. So there's no difference between a link course and a treat course?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, we had not identified any parameter other than the total acreage of the property.
And the number you got just was a number you assigned?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we first of all wanted to look at including golf courses and what we felt was a reasonable number. Presented that number to a number of golf courses, and there was some objection. However, the options that we presented to you have a metrics related to the size of a golf course, because as you say, some golf courses are smaller and some are larger, and so we wanted to be able to give the option for those larger golf courses to theoretically remove more trees.
Thank you very much. And recently on St. John's, they clear-cutted a big swath of forest to accommodate, I assume, roads. And I can't imagine how many trees they cut down, but I'm going to say 1,000 trees or more. How many complaints or notes did we get from the public? Because every day we have people driving by. I'm sure we must have had lots of people talk to the town. Who can answer that, Mr. Ramuno?